Hey, if you're pregnant over 40, I have just the community for you. It's a private community away from Facebook where women just like you come together to meet and support one another during pregnancy. To sign up for the waitlist, go to over40fabulousandpregnant.com/waitlist and be the first to know when the membership is open. I can't wait to see you inside. Welcome to Over 40 Fabulous and Pregnant. This is episode 17, and I am your host, Jamie Massey. And I want to help you have a fabulous pregnancy by celebrating and supporting your journey by sharing other women's pregnancy stories over 40. While we do discuss medical treatments and medicine, we are not doctors. These are women's experiences that came before us, not medical advice. And just a heads up, this episode does contain explicit language and may not be appropriate for younger audiences. On today's show, we have Johanna from Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, she's actually from New York and has a no BS approach. She is a pelvic floor and lactation coach, so I know you're really going to love this one. This is Johanna's story to motherhood with the help of modern medicine. And her story is incredible. I mean, the amount of eggs that they retrieved from her, oh my gosh, it's really amazing. The doctor was so confident that he said congratulations to her husband on becoming a father. And with her education, I could tell on the video that she really loves talking about birth. Before we get started, I wanted to shout out to TTC Baby Hassan, I think, for sharing an Instagram post last week. She is trying to conceive, and we wish her all the best of luck. And for well wishes, this goes out to Georgia Dawn Drought. She is 40 weeks along and just about ready to give birth. And brunch is scheduled for February 25th in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. If you will be in the area, please email me or DM me on Instagram. I would love to have you. I've also heard how important community is to you. So I'm working super hard to create a community. I think I have the name decided. I think it's going to be Over 40 Pregnancy Society. Y'all seem to really like it over on Instagram, and I really appreciate everyone voting. We also did a Celebrate Wednesday where y'all replied to me with what you wanted to celebrate. That was so fun getting to read all them and post them. I was just so excited and delighted reading them. We'll definitely be doing that in the future, and I think y'all really liked it too. But enough of me babbling already. Let's get into Johanna's pregnancy journey at 40. Johanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jamie, so much for having me. I'm super stoked to be here. So thank you.
Thanks for coming on. And can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a mom to a wonderful 19, almost 20-month-old son. I have been married almost 10 years next year in 2023. I reside in Charlotte, North Carolina, although from Chicago by way of upstate New York, so definitely avoid the cold. I also am a 20-year veteran physical therapist specializing in women's health, pregnancy, and postpartum women's health, pelvic health coaching as a physical therapist. So that's and I like craft beer, musical theater, and not trash TV. That's pretty much me. So
what's your favorite show?
The Wire. The Wire, yeah, I rewatch that show every other year or so from start to finish. It was really good.
It's so good. So good. So let's bring us back to your pregnancy journey and where that began.
Sure. So my husband and I enjoyed a few years of being married, traveling, not really worrying about anything. And 2016, we decided we'd had enough, and we moved from Chicago and bought a house in Charlotte, North Carolina, just to be closer to family. Figured that would be about a time to get the house, the dog, the yard, and to start a family. And so being 30, I think it was just turned 36 at the time, you think that you have time, but you don't know. And I guess you always hear people having difficulty, but you just think it won't be me. I won't be that statistic. And you get the narrative from the OB, well, if you're over this age, try for this long. And if you're under this age, you try for this long before you seek help. And I felt, even as a healthcare provider, stuck in the medical model. And what's really even more sad is that not being familiar with when, I ovulate, that I can only get pregnant a few days a month, that knowing how to read my cycle. There's a reason that your provider asks you when your last menstrual period began. And that's what, that all this stuff, I was clueless, you're on birth control, and just take it for granted that fertility is a switch that you can just turn on when you want and turn off when you don't want it. And that can't really be further from the truth. And so we did, timed intercourse. For those of your listeners familiar with the Creighton model, I did that for a while, reading cervical mucus. It was wonderfully educational. I did have 2 Creighton excisions of endometriosis. And while I felt I just always was hanging on to some sort of hope. But then I had talked to several friends and thought about it. And I was creeping up on 38 and a half, close to 39. And I just kind of made a decision at that point, after just struggling with loss and just that month after month feeling like, is it ever going to happen? Is this implantation bleeding? Looking up pictures on Google and sitting on the toilet staring at a piece of toilet paper, trying to just the crap that we get sucked into mentally, and the mind F that is I don't know if I can swear on here, so I'll try to behave. That it's really, we just get caught up in it. It just sucks, when you see friend after friend getting pregnant. And I think that because I was older and I'd been married a long time, I took a little solace in that maybe people won't ask me, because if we were going to do it, we would have done it by now, right? And I think that I really stopped going to church because every person was asking me, oh, do you have kids, or why not? And kind of being assholes about that. And, they weren't asking my husband, and I won't, go on that double standard. But I remember one day I snapped, was like, well, if you want to know about the status of my uterus and who's occupying it, I'm happy to tell you. And I just went off on this person, and they were kind of like, I just don't know. And then I really had to rein it in and say, okay, I'm going off the rails. So after about 1.5 years, 2 years of Creighton, and just feeling I just didn't have the luxury of time, that I just thought about IVF. I did research. My husband had a semen analysis at a certain facility. And I guess having the luxury is kind of a double-edged sword when you're a healthcare provider. So it's almost like you know too much. You know how things can unfold or should unfold, or the medical model. And I'm the kind of take no shit person where if things are not happening, if there's a button to press or a lever to pull, I'm going to pull it. I don't make a phone call and wait 2 days for the next step. And I don't feel that, I think we as the consumers of healthcare, as the patients, and I will land the plane on this, that we also need to hold our providers accountable. And I try to hold myself accountable when it's my patient or client on the other end, making sure, have I answered all your questions? Is there another way I can support you? Not that it's my job to do your job for you, but to always leave the patient or customer feeling supported. And so I really researched the IVF clinics in my area in December of 2019, and I went in for a consult. And this reproductive endocrinologist, Dr. Tolga Messin at Caroline's Fertility Institute, he's wonderful, absolutely wonderful, but he's not going to handhold you. He drew on a piece of paper, I still have it, of dots for an egg retrieval and little squiggles, and he walked through what an IVF process would look like. And I came in with a file, all of my medical records, my surgery, the scope pictures, I had my evidence as if I were going to court. And I laid it all out. That's just the kind of person I am. He looked at my numbers, was like, this is going to be no problem. He's like, it's just a decision if you want to. He's like, and you're going to have a lot of eggs, and your husband has no problem. He's like, this is pretty easy. I think you'll be a good candidate. And I'm thinking, well, you say that because it's, we always think that it's financial gain. And honestly, the next day we found out my employer is wonderful and they offer great fertility coverage. So
wow,
that's also a blessing. So working with other fertility, more natural providers at the time, I thought to myself in January 2020, I want to go on a pre-40 girls trip in February, and I just want 2 months to try naturally. We'll try in March of 2020. Well, we all know what happened.
Great timing.
Right, exactly. So we walked into the RE's office, and he's like, ASRE, which is the governing body of IVF clinics, he's like, we can't start any new medicated cycles. And I felt like my heart and my dream of being a mom was just kind of ripped out of my hand and thrown on the ground in a million pieces. And I tried to keep my shit together, but I remember walking out with my husband into the car and just crying like for the rest of that day. And we just all watched the world do whatever it did. And we just didn't know what our new normal is. And 2.5 years in, we're still kind of trying to figure out what new normal is. But that all being said, it really only ended up delaying me. And I remember calling it that, Dr. Messen's nurse, because again, I'm a type A, I'm from New York, and no bullshit kind of person. I remember her name, Priscilla, and I was just like, look, I know y'all, your hands are tied, and they were being laid off. Like this was furloughs, this was people, this was a lot, right? And I guess as they had did meetings and the ASRE, like the providers met and talked about it, they called me within a week and they said, we're going to keep an eye on COVID numbers, whatever. And they said, because you are 39 and change, we will put you on a higher priority list. Not that I'm special, but time is not on my side. So I ended up going through medication training, kind of that from the start to finish. My experience in the IVF clinic, start to finish, even with the 6-week delay, I ended up graduating in early September of 2020. So, and I, at that point, was 8 weeks pregnant. So as far as the egg retrieval process, learning all the injections, and for those of you listening out there, I am always happy to walk you through that, because you get that valise of medications. You're like, what is this?
It's
a lot.
So overwhelming.
It's a lot.
It is.
I will say, we kept a chart and we just made a thing of it, and I did some of my own injections. My husband did some, my mom did some, and it just was what it was. The egg retrieval, I don't like waffle fries normally, but they tasted very good after. I was very blessed to have over 40 eggs.
God.
And my husband's sperm was fine. And we were very, very, very blessed. And actually checking, 26 of them made it to be mature blastocysts, so made it to that day 5, day 6 stage. And of that, we elected to do genetic testing on the best 8, and 4 came back viable, with very good grading. So we knew we had the benefit of a good sample size. I will just say, I am blessed. I did nothing special other than I have PCOS, and I'm a lifelong athlete. So physical fitness is very important to me. A good diet, good sleep. I did follow a lot of, it starts with the egg, but this is not I don't want people all up in my demons, like what I did to be magical. I was very, very blessed with that number, and do not take that lightly. So after that, I took a month off for my 40th birthday because I like beer. And on July 30th, 2020, I went in with the time, they monitor your lining, et cetera, et cetera. And Dr. Messen's partner, Dr. Yeltsin Kaya, who is, he's an angel walking on this earth. He walked us through the transfer process and, showed my husband on video. And even in COVID, a lot of practices were not allowing partners to come in, and they were not all about that. It's like they knew that this experience could literally change your life. And so, he went in, I had acupuncture. It was a very calming experience. And I'm like, this is the way to get pregnant. Not a drunken roll in the hay. Like, if I had to get pregnant again, all things aside, this is what I would do, because it was so relaxing. They had very calming music. They prayed. We prayed. It was just such a great experience that, I will say the 2-week wait was hard, but Dr. Yeltsin Kai literally came out, because transfer, you're not asleep or whatever. And he shook my husband's hand and said, congratulations, you're going to be a father.
Oh my
I was like, he was that confident that this is going to work. And to even watch the embryologists as they, it's all very timed. And they saw the embryo, and I knew gender of the 4 that they could choose from. And I just said, pick the best one, because I didn't want to know. I mean, so I that's really the story, that I had a very, very easy pregnancy. I kept running, lifting weights. I didn't have hyperemesis gravida or morning sickness, or I was blessed in that regard. So I kind of like to fast forward to my labor and delivery, because that's where it gets juicy.
Okay. I do have one question.
Sure.
In the fertility clinic, they were the ones doing acupuncture.
Yeah. So I did have an acupuncturist. I actually went from her office to my transfer. So let me just add that caveat. But yes, sometimes they will allow they'll allow your acupuncturist to come in, or they'll partner with it if they are kind of a holistic integrative setup.
I never even thought about doing that, but that's such a great idea.
I mean, the research to support it is what it is. You know, it's not conclusive, but I think for those of us in this space where time is not on our side and we feel those pressures, you kind of throw stuff to the wall and see what sticks. I don't regret it, and I would do it again.
Do you get acupuncture regularly?
I do not, no. With a toddler running a business and doing I just unfortunately don't have time, but I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's great. It's so relaxing. That's a great idea.
I know.
So during pregnancy, how did you prepare? I'm sure your background had a lot to do with it too.
Sure. During pregnancy is really when I became more serious about not just pelvic floor health, but serving pregnancy and postpartum. So knowing what I saw after delivery, what could go wrong, or not wrong, but what can be lingering effects, I was very conscious about choosing activity that prioritized core stability, lower extremity flexibility, awareness of posture, relaxation, reducing external and internal stress, good nutrition, sleep, just kind of taking care of that house that was growing our son. So, but focusing on keeping a good, strong core to the extent that you can. You know, as your midsection grows, especially forward if your belly gets bigger, it can put a lot of stress on your back. So and there's to an extent you can't avoid it. But doing what I could to reverse all of those effects, rib pain, sometimes people have diastasis during pregnancy. So I really was keen on making sure I did what I could to take care of that and not have it be an issue, which you can't do 100%, but I tried.
Sure. Could you help define what pelvic floor
physical therapy?
Yes.
So pelvic floor physical therapy is a subspecialty of physical therapy that focuses on, for those who have vaginas, female, etc., we really focus on restoring mobility, introducing flexibility in the muscles, not only outside the vagina. So we think about hips, low back, sacrum, SI joint, but also the muscles internally that may be affected either by pregnancy or by life in general. So we really try to zero in on getting a little bit more mobility, flexibility, sometimes work with tight muscles, sometimes work with loose muscles, but viewing the pelvic floor as a key piece in the whole body as a system. So if you think about when you have a knee injury, okay, so think about Ernie Els, who's was a golfer in the 90s. He tore his ACL, right? So you think about this famous athlete having surgery, and he's going to physical therapy. We all think about that. Well, being pregnant and delivering is no different. It's a controlled trauma, let's say for vaginal or cesarean births. So seeing a pelvic floor physical therapist would focus on not just the pelvic floor and getting things back to where they need to be, but also now kind of taking that pelvic floor and getting it to function happily within the system of the body as a whole. So that's really what we focus on. We have specialized extra training. So most of us are orthopedic physical therapists, so knee pain, back pain, hip pain, shoulder pain, with an extra added layer of, we know about the vagina, the vulva, and all the things around it that could go wrong, and helping it to kind of steer the ship back in the right direction, so that women are, and men, there's pelvic floor physical therapy for men, that we can get back to running without peeing our pants, or we can exercise without feeling heaviness or worry about prolapse. Diastasis recti, which is, it's a coning in your abdomen. It looks like you have a little alien head wanting to come out that just is there. And just kind of helping mitigate the after effects of pregnancy to get back to either desired exercise or just friggin' taking care of your kid. If that answers that question.
Going back to your IVF, you said that you just wanted to put in the healthiest egg and not know the sex. Did you find out the sex during birth? Or I'm sorry, during the pregnancy?
So I did, and I was the only one who did. My husband did not want to know gender, and I respect that. So with all the NIPT testing and all the other testing along the way, my RE said, you're probably going to find out anyway. We'll do our best to not tell you. And I said, it doesn't matter to me. So I knew gender pretty much at 4 weeks. So, but I had people guess at our shower, they guessed, and I had everyone in my immediate family write what they thought, gender, weight. I put it in an envelope when we were on our way to the hospital the first time. So, and they were all wrong. They all guessed girl, and we had a point.
Oh, funny. You said you thought you were having a girl from 4 weeks?
No, I'm sorry. My parents, siblings, and my husband all thought that we were having a girl. Oh. And
how did you decorate and clothes wise? How did you navigate that, knowing the sex?
A lot of people bought us gender neutral stuff. I went to Goodwill and just picked out stuff, and I kept it hidden like you would Christmas presents. I mean, honestly, were there certain people that I told? Yes, because they wanted to know. I have a very dear friend who has just sent us hand-me-downs. She has 2 older boys. I think I told her, but it really wasn't a big deal. It just wasn't a big deal for us. So people guessed, they tried to guess up until, and I just tried to yeah, we'll see.
That would be really hard to keep that a secret.
It is, and it's not. I don't know. I can see how it would be, but it was just.
Looking at products, was there anything that helped you through your pregnancy?
I can't say, there were some magnesium creams that helped, because I would get abdominal cramping, and my son his feet were up in my ribs for a good month and a half. So Tylenol. Other than that, there's a lot of predatory marketing for pregnant folks, and no, I had a lot of cinnamon toast crunch. Maybe that's about it. I can't say.
I think that goes with age too, that we're not as big of a sucker to be sucked into all of the products. I think the younger generation might be.
Yeah. Or there's this need to have. And I also think if you've been on any segment of fertility, whether primary, secondary, or you kind of had 2 kids and you want a new kid, or a kid, say you had a second marriage, I think that you've already spent your fucks, if you will. You've already spent that curiosity. So you just kind of want to get to the finish line and to deliver. Or at least that was my experience. So,
I can see
the belly bands do help, but I was never, and I'm happy to share a picture of when I was 39 weeks, 7 days or 6 days pregnant. And I never got that large, and I was very blessed. But some women, I have some clients that, even at 5-6 months, there are some corsets and belts and SI belts or support belts that will help them. And that's pretty much the only thing I would recommend that I can think of.
What about classes? I know, being in the medical industry, did you feel the need for any education?
So I did take the obligatory hospital virtual tour. With COVID, it was just really, it's kind of hard when you can't see the space in general, and where's the OR if I need a C-section, or where's pregnancy postpartum. Did take one online breastfeeding class that was just very generic. But I did set myself up, again, this is where it comes in, that I set myself up and asking for antenatal, during pregnancy, pelvic floor PT. I asked for lactation consulting. I asked for outpatient once the baby was here. All of those things, I sought that out There was one class, I believe the vendor was Tiny Hood, that was a general birth class that they did it was a labor and delivery nurse that gave a really nice step-by-step, the stages of labor, what to expect, what's a C-section, early breastfeeding. It was generic, but I think it was by far superior to the birthing class that the hospital offered. So I'm a big proponent of trying to educate the consumer, the family on, especially first-time parents, of what it is, kind of understanding what their thoughts and ideas are around the pregnancy and birth experience, and then trying, instead of just injecting my thoughts, feelings, beliefs, hearing them out and maybe filling in the gaps where there's either misinformation or they're just not sure.
Mm-hmm. So going back to your birth, what was your plan for birth? You seem very excited to talk about this. This is your jam, I can tell.
It is, because this is what really kind of sealed the deal for me. So having had several friends, a lot of people just feel the need to tell their birth story. And I understand that's the point of this podcast. So barring that, I had several friends who said, "Oh, do you want?" And I said, "No, because I want my birth, like, if I'll hear it after my baby's here. So no, I don't want to hear it." But preparing was that it's kind of like a wedding where you've done everything you can do. All the guests are going to arrive or not. All of the food may or may not be there. Uncle Timmy may or may not get drunk. Like, we don't know. The goal at the end of the day is to be married to the person that you were engaged to. And if you accomplish that, it was a good day. And so my goal was to safely have this child and that I was safe and healthy. So whatever that ended up being, it ended up being. I had told my husband my wishes, that in the case that I couldn't vouch for myself or decide for myself, he knew what my wishes were, to progress as naturally as I could before any pain mitigating, interventions, and that I just did not want a C-section. In this country, in the United States, if you're listening, the rates of C-sections for first-time mothers, especially women of lower socioeconomic means, along, ethnicity lines, the statistics just suck as far as the high rates of C-sections in this country. And I knew that's unless I absolutely needed it, and I wanted the reasons why. So going into birth was just that. And I did not want to be induced. If I may just kind of go into it, and I'll try to keep this as succinct as I can.
Yeah, let's go.
This honestly is my favorite part. Okay. So at 39 weeks, 6 days, I went to a kind of a group birthday party, and it was great because I knew it was kind of the last hurrah, if you will, for my husband and I to be around our friends, and people were excited. Everybody was drinking except for me, obviously. But I remember I did let myself have 5 ounces of beer, and I was like, you know what? It was low ABV, whatever. So having that, then we just had a nice breakfast with some friends, and I knew that Monday I was going to be induced. And my OB had told me the case for it, and MFM, what's called maternal fetal medicine. So women who are over 35 usually will be followed for an extra layer of protection, liability mitigation, etc. So my MFM doctor had just explained to me, and I can link this study in the show notes, the ARRIVE study, which is the big push for why women of a certain age, especially ART pregnancies or assisted reproductive pregnancies, are induced. And I, reluctantly agreed. So I go to the hospital, and my practice was whoever you see on call is who you see. So they did a cervical check, 10 out of 10, don't recommend it, especially when the OB comes in and his fist is the size of the Hulk. It was just not pleasant. And they wanted to do what was called Cervidil. And what Cervidil is, it's basically a suppository they put in vaginally, and it has topical medication that is supposed to, over the course of 12 hours, make the cervix dilate. And it's pretty much a set it and forget it crackpot, and we'll see what happens in the morning. So with the cervical check, about 4 hours in, he says to me, you have what's called a non-gynecoid pelvis. Basically, what this OB was telling me is that my pelvis is not favorable for a vaginal birth. That we're not talking about the muscles and bones. We're talking, and I know we're audio only, but like he's basically saying my pelvis is too narrow and that this is just going to end one way. We can see how far we get, but it's only going to end one way. And he didn't have to say it. I knew that would be, so if the baby's not coming out my vagina, it's going to come out my abdomen. And he's just kind of mentally preparing me for that. But he wanted to give me a TOL or trial of labor and see how far we got. So fast forward to the next morning, I think we got some sleep and I come in, the next OB is on call. And this guy is just not known for his bedside manner. But unlike my reproductive endocrinologist, he sat down, did a cervical check, looked at the notes, and looked at me and said, this baby's not coming out your vagina. You've tried the Cervidil, this suppository, I did not dilate. And when they do what's called a Bishop score, so a Bishop score is when they basically give you an indication of how far progressed the baby is going to labor, along with, dilation, all those other things we hear about. So all in all, I was not even 1 centimeter dilated. My cervix was high and closed. The suppository fell out. They wanted to balloon catheter me. I was just in my brain. Okay, so this guy's just sitting down, and it's a man telling me this. And I'm sorry, male OBs are great, but he basically is sitting here telling me I have an unfavorable pelvis, which he doesn't have an X-ray, and he's telling me this baby, I'm putting. The only way it's going to come, whether I go now or 5 days from now, isn't going to have a C-section. And I said to him, and I'm still in the moment, my fight or flight response was kicking in, and I'm saying to him, if I were your 40-year-old daughter, what would you do? Without hesitation, he said, I would tell her to have a C-section. He said, I know that you've waited very long and very hard. And I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm not saying that this OB was, an asshole for saying this, or that he's wrong and F him and look what I did. But my rub was that I asked him straight in the face. I had my MST, so I have the fetal heart monitor on. And I said to him, can you look at the past 4 or 6 hours of data and tell me, am I in any maternal distress or fetal distress? He said, no, your baby is what's called OP, or is in a favorable position for delivery. So he's head down, so he's in the position he needs to be in. Mm-hmm. I said, so there's no distress. I said, so worst case scenario is that I am free to go home. He's like, there is nothing, you're not in any distress. And I said, mind you, I am 39 weeks. So I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'm not 30. I was 39 weeks one day when I went in to deliver or to get induced. Great. Didn't happen. But my husband kind of looked at me. My husband was supposed to be my advocate, but like, if there's anything, I am a type A person and I don't take shit from people. And that he left the room, and my nurse, who was wonderful, and nurses are afraid of doctors. It's like this whole hierarchy in healthcare. And I am going to go off on a tangent that we as just human beings, we think doctors are gods and they assume a lot of liability. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of respect for them, but the rest of us, nurses, OTs, PTs, speech, radiology, we all have licenses and brains too. And I remember asking the OB, like, he said what he said, this is my recommendation. I'm like, great. I need the room, please. I felt like Olivia Pope from Skeanal. So I said to my nurse, I said, yes. Can you please just say? And I said, I need you to straight up, I'm not going to rat you out if you say something, but, and she's like, no, you need to go with your gut. Your numbers look great. There's no fetal distress. Don't worry about it. I said, great. I have that information. And I sat there with my husband and I just remember crying my eyes out. Like this is just everything I didn't want it to be. So I'm going to become one of those, 30 to 35% of first time moms. Like if that's what I needed, fine. But like, when I again asked the OB when he came back in, like, what is the reason? Can you give me one reason to stay here? Like Tracy Chapman, give me a reason. And just because is not a reason. A non-gynecoid pelvis.
Mm-hmm. What do you say?
A non-gynecoid pelvis is not a reason for me to just have an open abdominal surgery. Just no. And so I ended up going home. My husband and my OB called me that afternoon. This was maybe 4:00 in the afternoon. We call my parents. They're on dog duty, and tell them we're coming home, whatever. My OB calls my cell phone because I have her cell phone, and she's like, so what happened? And I said, Vicky, I'll tell you, because I had already scheduled an appointment with her in a couple days. So I said, I'll tell you when I come see you. And so I remember going home, I called a couple of professors, colleagues, people I know in the industry. And I'm like, what do you know about a non-gynecoid pelvis? And really, it's the study of pelvimetry, but basically that there's a correlation between the anatomy of your pelvis, because not all our pelvises are equal, and whether or not it will be favorable for you to have a vaginal birth. And bottom line is that the science is very dated. It's not something that most OBs will it's not the one thing that you defer to. The way that they're determining it is sticking their hand up your vagina. And I'm sorry, you don't have an x-ray. You don't have other measurements to make a very weighty decision. So I always like to say that 9 out of 10 women probably would have went ahead and had the C-section, especially because I've been on such a long road knowing this would likely be my only child that, okay, fine, we'll go there. And I just decided, I remember sitting down with my OB, and my husband came with me, and she had read all the notes. And I said to her, is there anything precluding me from just having a trial of labor? I said, I don't think he's ready. I don't think my son is ready to make his entrance into the world. And she said, nope. And I will say, I went back 5 or 6 days later, and they gave me a dose of Cytotec, which it's an oral drug that they can use during miscarriages, but it basically will induce labor, soften the cervix, etc. So they gave that to me at night. Very nice, younger OB came in. He'd already heard everything. And I said, look, I'm going to try this, and we'll see in the morning how far we get. This is what I want, a trial of labor. If I'm not progressing, whatever. And so he's like, I am on board with that plan. Fast forward overnight, they put me on a pain management, and I remember just hearing this gush of water. And I looked down, and the nurse is like, I think you peed yourself. I'm like, no, my water just broke. So my water broke. It was everywhere. It was wonderful. There was little meconium or fecal poop in that. So they wanted to keep an eye on that. Great. So I ended up being 9 centimeters dilated. They told me, get some rest. There was a changing of the guard. The new OB, Dr. Bullard, she's amazing. If you're in Charlotte, you need an OB. I started active labor at 9 a.m. and by 3:30 p.m., so 6-ish hours of pushing, it was hard. It was long. I did end up having an episiotomy. She looked at me. She talked me through the progress. She talked me through how, my son's head was kind of turtling in, turtling out, because he was in a good position. I'm not saying they were wrong, that my pelvic floor is tight, but the point is that they let me try. They let me, and I'm not saying I risked my son, but there's many other women who would have made a different decision, and I respect that. Mm-hmm. But I asked the questions, got the information to be able for me to make that decision. And I have had some people say you gambled with your son's life. And I don't view it as that. At any point, I said to her, if things are not looking, his cords around his, fetal heart rate's dropping, I want you to tell me, and we are in the OR having a C-section. But the fact, and I didn't do it to prove the other OB wrong. I didn't do it to be the hero. I did it because that's what I felt my body was capable of. And that's the birth that I felt was waiting for me. And it does not invalidate a belly birth or a C-section birth. April is C-section awareness month. My son was born in April. But the point is that my provider heard my concerns and my preferences and supported them. And it's no joke that the reimbursement for C-sections is higher. It's a surgery. They can plan it. It's less time for them. And they are very valid and necessary, but they also there are too many women and families out there who just have unplanned or emergency C-sections for me to buy that there's not some other, issue or motive there. So, that's kind of where the exciting part ends. And, Dr. Bullard is amazing, and she was so supportive. And I remember her staying with me in the labor room for at least 4.5 out of those 6-ish hours. She was there pushing, and, she held the scissors up for the episiotomy, and you do it. and it might have been like an inch, maybe. Okay, so I hadn't, and there's kind of pros and cons of that, but it got me my son. It got me a healthy vaginal birth, and I'm forever grateful. The next morning, I remember her coming in at the end of her shift, and she's saying, and I was nursing him, and she's like, he's beautiful. Do you have any questions for me? And she kind of said mom to mom, just some very kind words about just her experience. She has 3 or 4 children, and like, it doesn't get old for her, that she truly loves what she does, because being an OB on call is very hard. There's a lot of reasons that they kind of phase out of delivering babies. But to this day, she's amazing. And that's the kind of provider we as moms deserve and families deserve. So afterbirth is kind of a nothing burger, but I did have to set up, like I said, outpatient lactation to kind of get myself set on the right course. I ended up breastfeeding my son on and off, and then I pumped for him for 15 months. And he got very little formula. Am I saying that formula is not a valid choice? Absolutely not. I think it is what it is, but I knew that was my goal. And that's honestly my experience in pregnancy, especially birth and delivery, is like, no, I need to be in this space helping families to not have the experience that I did. So I became a lactation consultant and started my practice for pregnancy and postpartum.
That's awesome. And I think another important part of your delivery was that you spoke up and you really advocated for yourself.
Right. And I think that is, sometimes we fear and we go along. It's kind of a people pleasing paradigm that we're operating within. And I get that, but we don't do it with car mechanics. We don't do it but because it's our body and our babies, it's just such a different dynamic that learning how to facilitate conflict resolution and how to identify what I want and to not feel like you're the princess, but that I'm the person receiving services and knowing what I want is okay. Sometimes we as women fear being needy or clingy or emotional. You know what? We are beautifully programmed. Having needs is it's human. Having preferences and beliefs is human, and it's okay to want those to be respected, and having providers that can be receptive to that. This whole insurance medical model is bullshit anyway, and that's another podcast, but being able to communicate, hey, this is really what I need, whether it's trauma-informed care, whether it's certain religious or cultural beliefs, whether it's I want to save the afterbirth and I don't need somebody making a joke about it. I want to plant it in my backyard. I believe breastfeeding needs to happen, and this is why. Being your own advocate is just not, it's really not possible, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but unfortunately, I think I am by far the exception and not the rule, and I think that needs to change. And I understand why people have doulas and they have birth prep, things written, and why people are starting to choose home births instead of a hospital situation, because we want to take back what should be a beautiful, amazing experience and not have it be what serves somebody else's, the healthcare model, hospital model, serve their agenda. And again, yeah. I want to say that C-sections are valid births. They are amazing. They are necessary. I believe it's amazing. They are needed, but you can't tell me that 1 out of every 3 women needs it. And I'm using air quotes.
I agree. So postpartum wise, how was your recovery?
So I had a very easy recovery. I didn't have a ton of bleeding, cramping. I was very, very lucky in that regard. Just doing very early core muscle activation and allowing myself grace to get back slowly but surely, going on walks when he was days old. I wasn't trying to go and run a marathon, but just being very pragmatic and strategic about what I did when I did it. But also that I had to humble myself, and what would I tell a new mom who is 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks postpartum? and working on basic, 360 breathing and core muscle activation, and just really just layering it on in time, not being afraid to just work at it slowly and honoring that postpartum is recovery, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Emotionally and mentally, it was just, I had to honor the dichotomy that it's okay for me to miss my life as not having a child and to miss my old self, but also like, because people would say, you wanted this your whole life, so why are you ungrateful? And it's like, it's okay that I still have a little bit of grieving that my life is forever changed and that my marriage is forever changed. So just creating space that postpartum anxiety is very, very real. Even if you are very mentally strong, have good coping mechanisms, good support systems, it is real. And just be prepared to give yourself space to have thoughts and support when you need it. And we give so much attention to the baby showers, gender reveals, and cute clothes, et cetera, et cetera. I'm glad that there's more speak on social media that here's what a new mom needs. Don't ask to come and hold the baby unless you show up at her doorstep with food, maybe coffee, and just say, how can I help you? Or if she has a list of things, do her dishes, let her shower, let her take a nap. There were so many people who blessed us those early few weeks so that, my husband did not get paternity leave, even though he works at home. My mom was able to be here. I was able to take a few months of maternity leave, but all in all, just showing up and because they say it takes a village, and unfortunately not enough of us have that. So postpartum was pretty easy, unremarkable, straightforward, and just seeking out. But again, I set myself up for those, having those resources: postpartum doula, postpartum lactation consultant, postpartum pelvic floor PT, and postpartum mental health were all, I put those in place because I figured I might need them. And sure enough, I did.
I think you touched on it a little bit. I think as we are older women having babies, especially for first-time moms, we're so set in our ways, in our careers, in our 40s, and then we have babies, and it's this big interruption. It's a good interruption, but we almost have to reset. And I think you were kind of speaking of that also.
Sure. And it is a reset. It is I think allowing yourself to have opinions of what you think it will look like, but being open-minded, open-hearted that you may change and it's okay, that we're all evolving, growing. And I think the benefit of being an older mom is that you're more assured of who you are, who does and doesn't matter, setting boundaries, etc. But that you're also open to your feeling. Once they put that little baby on you, the world does stop, and you can change like that. And no one can tell you, prepare you for that until that moment is yours, whether it's birth or adoption. It's all going to change. I never thought that I would want to be a stay-at-home mom or work from home. I prided myself on my career and earning a good living and my patience. And, I worked for corporate PT, and it was great. And the first thing I thought is that, okay, I'm done working. And I've been able to structure my life and I'm in the process of why I chose to build my own practice, is that I am available for my son. He is my priority and not my career. And that's the choice that I've made. And even people who knew me well before I had a child, they're just like, you're Johanna 2.0. And I'm like, I'm right. And you know what? I'm happier for it, because you don't want to miss those moments. My son today, we went to the library for the first time, and just to see him color and point out books and shapes, and he's getting very, very verbal. And he was a late walker, but cognitively he started talking at 7 months. And just to kind of allow him to develop, and we've been very fortunate that we've been front and center to see him grow up. So yes, it is an interruption to your career, but I try to encourage any friend of mine, if they were to ask those questions, it's going to be like this, or it's going to be like this, that just allow your feeling to happen and try to let go of what you think it's going to be, because you may be surprised at how you respond. And it's, you know, it's beautiful. Like, there's nothing like it. Seeing your own little tiny human just like say dada or mama for the first time there's just nothing like it.
Yeah, I know as an aunt how good of a feeling that feels. And it's like, I can't imagine, going to the next level and being a mother.
Right. And I just think for any family that wants that, I really hope and pray that they're given the opportunity, whether bio, donor, adoption, foster, whatever, that it's all special and beautiful. And, raising human beings is not for the faint at heart, but I just really wish we could let go of this narrative that, oh, you're going to miss this, or this is really hard, or you look like you have your arms full. It's like, why don't we start telling, especially moms, you're doing a great job. Just you see a mom, or you see a woman with kids, maybe she's the aunt, grandma, nanny, whatever, you're doing a great job. Just walk through Target and tell her that, because maybe she feels like she's doing a shitty job, instead of whatever platitudes.
I love that.
Because I hate when people say things that are very canned or perfunctory. The platitudes they express are more to help them feel better about themselves and not truly serving that mom. And just really trying to be aware of the words we use.
Definitely. So thinking about pregnancy, do you think that y'all will have more kids in your 40s?
I'm going to go with probably not, that we are not planning to transfer any embryos. It's something that I wrestled with. And even as my son turned 1, he's approaching 2 in April, that I like the way my life is. He's a relatively easy child. And he's so fun. And I think about what we want our life to look like, resources, that we're good. If I get pregnant, then we'll deal with it as it comes. But at this point, I think we're a one. Mm-hmm. I think we are one and done.
And what do you think your biggest challenge was being pregnant in your 40s?
I just got tired of that you're 40, that, right? I think providers just not letting you forget that I was 40, or saying, oh, you look good for 40. And it's kind of like, the whole, know a lot about football for a woman, and it's, again, people just not knowing what to say instead of just kind of being, I don't know. I think having IVF and just being used to people being ignorant, you just got to learn where your emotional energy is best spent. And I can't undo my age. I can't make myself younger. So here we are. I'm 40. I'm pregnant. Get over it. Like, I can't.
I love that. Anything you recommend that would help prepare someone for pregnancy and birth?
I would say if you're going through IVF, that you build in time for you to mentally rest and for self-care. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget what makes you and your partner who you and your partner are. If you're a mom doing this alone, that what makes you you, because that's so you. Your future child needs you to be you, healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally. So you still create space for you in the shitstorm that is all the appointments, blood draws, ultrasounds. As far as to my friends who are pregnant, with your doctor's blessing, barring any complications, that you keep moving your body in a healthy way. Now is not the time to start interval training if that's not your thing, but that you, again, take care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that looks like for you, and that you seek out more than the hospital birthing classes or breastfeeding classes, that you take the time to get yourself education from qualified individuals and not just TikTok. Like, if you're going to social media, that's great. There's a lot of, I'm on social media, and I went there because we need licensed providers and not influencers giving our consumers information, so that you feel you have an idea of what you want and where your support is coming from, and that you set yourself up. Make freezer meals for postpartum. Just make them, or set a meal train up. Do not be afraid to ask for that. And like I said, the majority of my pelvic health coaching is for postpartum, that don't be satisfied with the 6-week checkup and, oh, you're fine. You can go have sex and like throw javelins and go jump on trampolines and you're going to be fine. Oh, you pee your pants. It's fine. You're a mom. Welcome to motherhood. Oh, you have pain with sex. Oh, you think you're prolapse. Oh, just that whole narrative of that we have all this checking for the pregnant person during pregnancy and then postpartum. It's like, okay, here you go. Bye. That you set yourself up with those providers, the lactation consultant, pelvic floor PT, postpartum mental health counselor, and who your people are, if it's not family, church friends, or whatever, that you have your people lined up.
That's good.
That's what I would say.
What advice would you give yourself when you were pregnant if you could go back?
I think that I enjoyed the moment, but I wish that I had done more mental journaling of just feeling him kick, because there's really nothing like feeling that baby move inside you and to sleep more during pregnancy. But also just, it's okay. Like whatever I want, if I want to sleep, I want to eat, just let it happen and just remove all these stupid expectations of needing, you need to take care of you. And it's a time that it's okay to be selfish.
That's good. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Sure. Like I said, you can find me on social media at the Nourish Nest PT. My shtick is really just helping moms, especially first-time moms, feel confident in pregnancy and postpartum and feeling good about pelvic floor habits, whether it's toileting, constipation, if you have diastasis, prolapse, pain with intercourse, intimacy, anything and everything. I do also offer lactation consultant classes, some pre-birth, after-birth services, anything with breast pumps. I'm your girl. And like I said, I made a pivot in my career a few years ago during and after pregnancy because of the gaps that I saw. And it's my hope to be in the space with the heart of a mama, but the brain of a physical therapist to help bridge that gap and to give that personalized support that I wish I had. I'm not some influencer trying to sell you crap, supplements or this magic pill or belt that, when you work with me, you get me and my support, empathy, and professional guidance. And just, I keep it real. I'm a no bullshit kind of person. So, I try to help moms.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't gotten it by now, that when you get me, you get that support. And people say, oh, how can I do virtual PT? A lot of it just comes down to coaching and feeling like you want to be able to trust your body to get back to exercise and not have this leakage. My OB says it's normal. Is it? Is it normal? Mm-hmm. No, it's not, Janet. It's not. So landing the plane, just putting out content that's relatable, funny, educational, and just if you want to know what it's like to work with a pelvic floor coach, I like working virtually because you don't have to drive to appointments. You don't have to worry about sick kids. It's the comfort of your own home, and we talk through things. I give you things to work on, and I find a lot of moms, especially moms with littles, are like, great, I can have a toddler crawling over me and I still get my care.
Do you do one-on-one? Is that how you help people?
Yes, ma'am. I offer one-on-one virtual coaching. So that usually looks like a 4-month, every other week, where we meet for 45 to 60 minutes. We kind of talk about wins since the last check-in. All the exercises are uploaded to my HIPAA compliant portal, and we chat virtually. We demonstrate exercises. We can talk about, toileting habits, diet habits, nutrition, stress management. Yes, it all is one-on-one. I'm hoping in the future to do group coaching because I like that sense of community, but I find that especially new moms like just the privacy and not putting all their business out there. But there's definitely potential for expansion.
Cool. Johanna, I thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and your knowledge.
No, thank you, Jamie, for having me. It's been a pleasure. And like I said, I just hope my story makes women out there and families not feel alone, that, you never know what's possible.
And that wraps up Johanna's pregnancy journey at 40. I really loved how she discussed with the doctor about leaving after she was induced for the first time. You can tell that she likes to know facts and make a decision from that. I thought it was just so beautifully done. We have a special episode next week with a group of women that have given birth 5 years ago, 15 years ago, and 23 years ago, all in their 40s. I thought it would be really fun to mix it up and see how these women have reflected over the years. We had some really great conversations together. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Monday. Bye.